sorry. My name is Sarah Bernal. I am the program lead for the Urban Ag grant opportunity here at the California Department of Food and Ag. And yeah, maybe I should also review a little bit in terms of the questions. I am here to help you navigate any issues that you're having in understanding eligibility or funding priorities or any technical issues that you might be having. The things that I cannot do are to give you project ideas or to help you navigate any of the creative side of coming up with a proposal or something like that. So outside of that, I am open to any and all of your questions. I'll essentially just take people's questions in a row, and and then we have a whole hour. If you don't get an answer to a question that you have today, please send me an email with that question, because I might have to send it to the grants administration's office for clarification, since I don't know everything. And aside from that, I'll do my best and we'll just go in order. So Janine, please go for it.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon now. The day's flying by fast here.
Yep.
I just want to say thank you for hosting these office hours. I saw them on the website. I was like, yes, this is so helpful. So thank you. I am helping BUFA, Black Urban Farmers Association, with grant writing, and they're applying for this grant. It's an amazing opportunity. The track 2 is what we're going for, and the project is they're really trying to obtain land, and we're trying to find something that isn't reimbursement, where they'll help us with the down payment or some type of like lease to own or some way to obtain a larger piece of property for their farm to expand. So with that, I know that asking for land in the budget is acceptable. But we've been kind of going back and forth in some emails, and Retha and I just wanted clarification on the reimbursement, because I told her some grants, a reimbursement just means they hold the money. We have to give the invoice with the contract or whatever paperwork is required, and then the payment's issued to that entity, instead of like we have to pay out of pocket and then we give a receipt and then it's reimbursed. So I was just trying to get clarification on, track 2. What are the guidelines with that when it comes to awards? So that way we know exactly what to ask for in the budget.
Yeah, that's a great question, Janine. Thank you so much. And I am having a meeting with other programming from CDFA. That is the only other program that's ever processed a land purchase. So I'm going to be meeting with that program staff today at 3:30 to 4:30. So I'll be getting more details on this, and I will address this again at the next office hours. Hopefully I'll have more details. But what I can review, and something that I've already shared in email with Janine, is that if you are asking for funding for purchasing farmland or for purchasing land to farm on, only a maximum of 75% of your budget ask can go towards that request of land. So you cannot use the full 100% of your budget only towards land acquisition, capped at 75%. And then, Janine, with the definition of what a reimbursement grant is, to answer that question. So CDFA, obviously, all grant programs that I've ever seen prefer to do reimbursements, which does mean that the organization spends the money out of pocket and then submits for reimbursement of the expenditures that they had. However, this grant allows folks to apply for advanced payment. And so an advanced payment request is like a one-page form where you fill out saying, due to financial limitations or whatever, we don't have the money to do this in advance. And so you'll write out a short justification on the application. That application then has to go up through an administrative process to be approved. And once that's approved, and that approval process takes about 45 days. So that means that from the moment that you submit for an advanced payment request, you need to wait 45 days until that check is actually issued and processed and ready, and is now ready and issued to be sent off. So does that help clarify the sort of the way that advanced payment requests work and what you can expect? And you can find more details, Janine, also, sorry. There's a document that's called, it says advanced payment guidelines. And that one will go, that's all of the actual wording from the administration's office on what to expect when you're doing advanced payment. So I would recommend looking through that. It's like 2 pages. It's not super complex to read, but it'll help you understand what that process is like. And it's pretty much what I just said. So you can also not read it, but it might be helpful for you to look through that.
Is it on the website where the application is?
Yeah, so if you click on the RFA, the document, there'll be live links to all of these attachments at the very end. Just scroll to the bottom of the request for applications, and at the very end there's some attachments that you can click on. I also believe that yeah, that's where you would start. If you have any trouble finding that, just send me an email and I'll send it to you. But it is on the website in the RFA document.
All right, thank you. That's such a huge relief. I'm so thankful that the state's offering that, like extending that advance payment option, because some of our nonprofits just don't have the upfront funding for those big expenditures. So
Totally.
to have that as an option, whether that's for equipment or land or whatever it may be, that's such a blessing. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more thing to know is also lease to own is also an option if you're talking about land purchase. So I'll have more details on this process hopefully by the end of my meeting this evening. So
Okay.
okay.
All right, thank you. And
Thanks,
then
Janine.
one more quick thing for office hours for October, because we're going into the new month. That switches to Thursdays, 12 to 1.
Yes.
Right?
So thank you for bringing that up.
It.
No, that's awesome. Yes. So the link for that is in the same place on the website. And come October, the office hours will be Thursdays from 4 to 5. My hope is that any farmers that are harvesting at this time, can't make it in, might be able to attend at a later hour in October. So, after harvest hours, usually by 4. So yes, there will be a change once we hit October. And there will be 3 office hour sessions because the deadline for the grant is October 23rd. So we'll have it every Thursday until the application's due.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Janine. Okay, Rishi, you're up next.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hey, good. Nice to see you.
So I have a bunch of questions. I'm just going to do one at a time so I don't take up too much time here.
Okay.
About the application itself. So first question was, is the main project narrative, is that going to be described in for track 2 I'm talking about, is that going to be described in the track 2 project work plan? Because I don't see in the primary response section someplace to put that in. So I just want to make sure that I'm putting that in the right place.
Rishi, are you looking at the application in Amplifund?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So so your question is like, where is there something outside of the formulation of the questions? Because right now I don't have the application for track 2 open in front of me right this second, but I know that the first one is about your project team. The next one's about like your community need and what your project is going to do to address those community needs. And so in that question, that's about describing your community. When you then describe how your project addresses the need is really where the bulk of your project narrative should be located for the most part, because you're describing all the actionable things that you're going to do in that project and how your actions are addressing a need that your community has. So it would be mostly in that section. And then another like more condensed one are like the questions in the SWOT analysis that asks for a project goal, but there's a character limit of like 250 characters for that section. So, or for that one block.
Yeah, I guess that's, so I've copied all the questions over to a document for myself to keep track of. And so you have the first question is the project summary. That's 2 to 5 sentences. So I'm guessing that's not like the main project narrative.
No, yeah, correct.
Then you have a question about what communities does your project serve? So again, that's not the project narrative. Then we have the project SWOT template where it asks for project goal, but then it asks that's also concisely state in 250 words or less. And then it gives you like some options for what the goals should be. So then I don't actually see other than that, like where the, just like a primary project narrative would go?
Yeah, so I'm actually just gonna have to open it up because it's hard for me to remember the details of the verbiage of the questions, but okay, so here we go. Okay, so I'm on Amplifund right now. Actually, maybe I'll just share my screen so everybody can see what I'm doing, and then that way maybe it'll be easier to have this conversation. So
Yeah.
this is the Amplifund application for track 2. This is what you'll be seeing when you go ahead to go fill this out. Here's the applications question. So the first question is about your project team. And then I have a description on how to answer the project team question. Yes, so this one is what communities does your project serve? And so here we see be specific beyond general census tract. Who are the members of your target audience? Describe what identified needs exist in the community that are served by your project and how your project helps to address that need. So I would say that in this part right here, how does your project help address the needs of the community is probably where it isn't just probably is where you would really take the most time to describe what your project is doing.
I see. Okay, sorry, let me just pull that up for myself because what I'm seeing looks a little bit different than what you're showing.
Oh, you know why? It's because I have the administrative screen view. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't see what you guys see either, unfortunately. And then of course, the project work plan is going to be a more like itemized list of work tasks that you're going to be doing.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yes, in that first question is where you'll want to answer that. Or I'm sorry, the second question after the team member's description.
So in that question, you're looking for a description of the community, what their needs are, and then describe the whole project and how that project is going to address those needs.
Exactly.
So that's like, if I were to say like that's the longest response on this.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you.
I might suggest just updating that question.
Oh, I'll tell you right now, Rishi, I can't change anything right now. That is locked in stone.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or?
I have a bunch, but I'll just keep raising my hand.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, great. The next person I have is Ethereal. Sorry, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly.
Hi, it's Ethereal.
Ethereal. Okay, great.
So I had a question. So I had a first follow-up question on on Janine's questions. You mentioned a lease to own model, but on one of the previous Q&As, it says the CDFA can't repay a lease to own model. So I'm just confused. And then also there's a point on the funding needs to be like aligned with other fully funded commitment to purchase land, like it can't just be a portion and then like you finance the rest.
Yeah, so I'm going to get answers. So with the lease to own thing, my recollection of that question was about equipment. And so someone was asking about whether or not they could lease or partially pay for like a truck or something. It was something to do with a piece of equipment. And so one of the things is that we cannot cover a partial payment on a piece of equipment that's if you're going to purchase something that's equipment, it has to be purchased in full. I'm not sure if that question was related specifically to land, but I know that in terms of what I have, I mean, I've answered so many questions I can't tell you, but like my recollection of that last session was a challenge about equipment purchasing, not land purchasing.
So just read the answer. It says, similarly to rules regarding equipment, the cost of land must be fully paid for
okay.
established and verifiable funding sources.
Yes.
So it's the same situation.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. So yeah, and again, like, because this is not something that CDFA has ever actually offered before, except for one other program where they've processed 2 land purchases. I'm going to be meeting with them today at 4, or I think it's 3 or 4 o'clock to see like, what was the process for them? I've talked to grants administrators.
A little bit still on like the land to purchase thing.
can you repeat what you just said?
So it's still a little wishy-washy on what's completely eligible and the process.
Well, all I can say is that, well, what I know for certain right now, and what I will be asking follow-up questions today with the other program that's done this, what I know for certain is that land purchase is an allowable cost. Like I said earlier, 75% of your total budget can go towards that objective. What I'm needing clarification on from other program staff and from administration is, does there have to be a complete verification that the full cost of the land is going to be covered in advance of this ask of asking CDFA for a remainder? Do we need proof that the other $700,000 of this $1 million parcel, are going to be covered by these other financial means? And then I am really curious. So just a few days ago is when I got an email from that other program staff saying that rent to own or lease to own was a possibility. So I'm going to follow up a bunch of questions about what lease to own requirements will look like. And I know Janine has the same question. So bear with me. I will do my very best to have really solid procedural answers and expectations of what the process will be like moving forward for land purchasing. I think I have a lot of homework to do on my end that I'm hoping to have done by no later than next week. Is today Tuesday? Yeah, so I'm gonna have that meeting tonight. If I can get all of those questions answered tonight, then I will post all of the answers to that on the website in writing. And you can refer to the Q&A document that I'll post. It's already up there. I just haven't updated it since last week. But also feel free to send me an email if you need more follow-up, or to come next week and I can have this conversation again with better answers. But yeah, the questions that you're asking about lease to own absolutely is something I need to get better clarification on. And then also the question about like what type of documentation would be needed to prove that the rest of the land, like assuming that it's more than the allowable request, right? Like you're going to find land that's under whatever 75% is of 300,000. I don't know what that is right now off the top of my head. But I'm assuming that land will probably be more expensive than what the full grant can cover. So I'll be asking any other questions about what kind of documentation will be needed from the applicant to prove that we can go ahead and process that request. If you have specific questions about land purchasing, you actually would be great to put them in the chat. That way I can cut and paste them and send them and bring them with me to my meeting this afternoon. So I'm sorry I'm not like doing a great job of answering your question right now, but I promise this is a very high priority thing that needs to be understood and processed and related to the public more clearly. So I will be getting back to you with better answers.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a question on the project work plan. I was wondering, can our project work plan end before the expected end spending date?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's say like you're a project that just wants to buy a tractor or whatever. You could be done in 2 months, once you do the research, find the supplier. So your project can end anytime before September 2026. It just can't go after September 2026.
And then in our project work plan, should we also include our financial sustainability plan and how we're transitioning over to that?
You don't need to include the sustainability plan in the project work plan. And the little SWOT analysis work question, there's it ends with like, what is your sustainability plan? That'll be where you kind of like talk about how you plan on operating in the future. But as far as the project work plan, the most important thing to think through is that you're addressing all of the costs that are going to come up in your budget. So make sure that you're linking your activities to the expenses that will be invoiced for throughout your project. And then also it's going to be really helpful in terms of like evaluators, seeing the connection between those expenses and the goals of your project, right? So make sure that whatever deliverables or whatever outcomes of your work are happening, that they're like listed clearly, even if it's repetitive, like April, we do farm stands on Tuesdays. Yeah, well, you might have that again for May, and you might have that again for, so just keep just pretend like you're writing out a calendar of all the events that are going to happen until the money's gone, until you've spent through your budget request.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, great. Judy's iPhone.
Oh.
Judy.
Thank you. This is very, very helpful. So digging a little deeper into kind of some of the lease types of, so we're looking to lease undeveloped property for like $1 a year, and we're not going to need any grant funds to pay for the lease. But because of that, are there any requirements about, vesting, the cost of improvements, that we receive from the grant, or minimum length of time of farm operations, or that kind of thing?
There aren't any rules about minimum length of time of farm operation. There's nothing written in the administration handbook about that. I know that if you purchase equipment, you have to prove that you are going to not just sell it and make a profit off of it, because someone could buy a tractor and then sell it and make $50,000. So there is tracking that happens during the contract period where you'll go into more depth about your accountability on holding on to infrastructure, and then any interest that's gained. Those are all technical things that me as program staff, I don't actually have the legalese language for that. It's pretty standard in every grant that I've known of, that there is specific language regarding infrastructure and equipment. So anything over the cost of $5,000. The way that things are, expenses are categorized, we have equipment, which is items over the cost of $5,000, and then we have supplies, and supplies are anything under $5,000. There's some specific language that I would have to ask the grants administration's office about, that holds the awardee more accountable for equipment that are held for that purpose, that they aren't purchased and then resold onto the market right away. Judy, if that didn't really get to the nature of your question, I'm going to use the chat as a way to bank all the questions that I need to then resend out to grants administration for more detail. So if you were looking for something that I wasn't able to cover, that's pretty much my knowledge base right now. So if you want more details, could you actually, you're on your car. I don't know if you can, maybe you can send me an email later.
What's your email address, Sarah?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat, but just so that it's out there, because I don't know if you can see the chat on your phone. It's SARA.BERNAL@cdfa.ca.gov. And you can also find it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will draw. Oh, thank you. I will drop my question further into the chat, and I get it with around equipment. But a lot of our, it's going to be $18,000 for fencing, and kind of more those types of things that okay, so we've invested that much money. How long does that fence kind of need to be there? And part of that is we need to share this language with the lessor, the property owner. And then is there a way that we can see the contract ahead of time?
That's a great question. This is my first year working for the state. I haven't even seen a contract before, so I will have to. I don't know what the answer is to that question. Whether or not you can see a contract, or
at least a sample. We're going to need. The lessor needs to kind of know. Okay, what's the commitment here? What's our flexibility? And we do too. We insurance requirements and hold harmless and. Yeah, all of that stuff.
Yeah, Judy, can you send me your questions, and I'll make sure everything that goes into the chat right now, folks, I will put into the Q&A document that'll be posted to the website. So yeah, I think those are great questions. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer off the top of my head, so I'll have to go and ask. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So related, no, that's okay. And related to that, does that mean the reporting requirements are also going to be in the contract?
The reporting requirements right now, as it stands, is that, and this is also in the RFA, but you'll see, there's annual reports. So at the end of the first 12 months and every other 12 months, you'll submit a written report of your progress. And then there's a final report, which will be a standalone document kind of talking about the entire project. And then I don't know if you're applying, I'm assuming you're applying for track 2. There's some photographs that are part of the application of like where you're starting off. Maybe it's a piece of land that you haven't purchased yet, you know? And then you'll be required to submit 5 to 10 photos at the end of the grant period of the same space and or project materials. Like, let's say you're doing workshops or something, you can take pictures of those materials. And then in your application, you're going to see that we ask folks to collect 2 different metrics. And so for you, that could be anything from how many volunteers showed up at your farm or how many pounds of produce. So then you'll be required to report back on the metrics that you selected to collect.
Great. Okay. Well, I know all of this is contract. Okay. So thank you. So hopefully a very quick question. Can we pay our advisory members stipends, like $50 a meeting or something like that?
Yep. Stipends and community pay and anything related to operations and community engagement are all very relevant expenses.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll get busy in chat now.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Okay, Rebecca.
Hi.
Hi.
I have 2 questions. The first one is, I know that one of the goals of the program is cultivating agricultural literacy. And I'm wondering, I have somebody who's interested in providing kind of, their program is both gardening and cooking. And so my instinct is that from reading all of your materials, that you're more interested in the production and less interested in the consumption elements. But I know in that line, you say provide educational opportunities related to growing or consuming locally grown seasonal produce. So in terms of the consuming part, nutritional education to kids, cooking, distributing food, is that stuff that can be related to this or more?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the definition of urban ag that the state uses, it includes, you know, the cultivation, distribution, and consumption of agricultural goods. So those are very much included as activities, especially, I mean, for the most part, the goal is really to support local community growing. It'll be all I can tell you is this is going to be a competitive grant. I can already tell you that. So, I mean, being able to discuss how it's connected to local agriculture will absolutely make more sense than if you're importing produce from Mexico and then having a cooking class. You know what I mean? So I think there's a whole narrative going on here, but the consumption part is absolutely consumption and distribution are both very relevant parts of urban agriculture. So it would be a qualifying activity.
Okay, that's great. And then the other question that I have is about the application itself. And you have 2 different places where you talk about goals. So one of them is the SWOT analysis, and that seems to be one goal. And that's like a big overarching goal, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have goals in the work plan. They're called goals. And from the example that was in there, I was wondering, this is for track 2. Are you looking for like a goal? You're looking for multiple goals there, right? It's not the same goal.
It could be. I mean, there's no expectation that it's going to be a completely different goal. I think that the idea with the work plan goal is just so that the evaluator, because they're going to be evaluating, could be 10, 12 grants, you know, will have a really easy and quick reminder of, okay, this is the goal that this work plan is going to be measuring. So does that sort of help answer that? It does not. There's no expectation that it's going to be a separate goal, because the project work plan and the SWOT analysis are sort of processing information in 2 very different ways.
Right.
One being, so it does not need to be, there's no expectation that it's a separate goal.
Okay, I was just looking, like there's an example in the template for the work plan, and it says project goals, infrastructure, irrigation system improvements, fix existing irrigation and expand irrigation, and it kind of keeps going. And that just seemed like a really specific goal compared to these bigger overarching type goals. So in the work plan, can we have multiple goals versus in the SWOT? with one goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Use the work plan as best as you can to describe the scope of work that you're trying to accomplish by all that are seen in line items in your budget.
Okay.
You know, at the end of the day, the whole thing is really to try to connect why these expenses are relevant to what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. And I will raise my hand again too, because I have some budget questions, but I can also email if we don't get to them. They're really specific little things. So
Specific ones. Okay, great. Yeah. We'll go down the line.
Can I follow up on Rebecca's question?
Sure.
So just to clarify, so in the SWOT template where it asks for project goals, there we're selecting from the goals that are listed and maybe adding additional goals if we have them.
Yeah, you by no means do you have to select from one of those. That's just to help people who may not ever have written a grant to understand what that could look like. You can absolutely use the goals that are some of the goals that are already identified as benefits of urban ag, but if that's not reflecting your project scope of work, then it's not mandatory that you use that same list.
Okay, and then in the project work plan, the goals are more specific to how we're like the goals that we have as we accomplish the project that we've described.
Yeah, for the project work plan, an activity might be a goal. You know, one of your goals might be to purchase this quintessential piece of equipment, and you're planning on doing that in September, and it's attached to this line item in the budget, you know? So, yeah, does that sort of help answer your question?
Yeah.
I mean, your broader goal could be to increase production, and you're going to do it by doing all of these activities, like improving irrigation, buying equipment, hiring more staff, whatever all these activities will be to increase your production, for example.
I guess just a clarification between these two questions, because they both mentioned the word goal.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily related, but it would be okay to take, you know, a project goal from the SWOT template and then use that and say, this is the overall goal, and then these are the steps that we're going to take.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. Jocelyn?
Can I maybe give an additional example on the work plan?
Sure. Is this ethereal?
Yeah.
Okay.
For mine, for instance, like workshops are going to be part of our like goal fulfillment strategy. So I'm outlining workshop development plan, who's going to be in charge, how the curriculum is going to be built, how we're going to outreach, and all of that step by step, month by month, to execute our goal of educating the community on XYZ.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you're going through the process of like all the steps that it'll take to make these workshops a reality. Who on your project team is going to take the lead on making sure that this actually happens? And then we're going to see the cost of these things related in your budget, like staff time to develop, you know, or to operate workshops. That'll be a cost, I'm guessing, maybe in your budget. Or workshop materials might be another budget line item for your program if you're working towards these things. So yes, you were correct in that example. Okay, well, is that all right? Ethereal, did that?
Oh, that was just following up with Rishi. I had a follow-up question, but I think Jocelyn was ahead of me.
Okay, great. Okay. Jocelyn, sorry about that.
That's all good. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
So we are applying for track 1, and I have a couple questions about partners, the partner matrix, and then also letters of support.
Mm-hmm.
And we were wondering if we have a partner who's also interested in applying for track 2 separately, how does that affect us? Like if they get funding, can we not partner with them or?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So perfect. And then going off of that, we're working on our partner matrix, and we're wondering if we can add more columns to the template that you provided.
Yeah, go for it. That's great.
Perfect. And then a last question with the letters of support. Is there a page limit to them?
No, there's no page limit. Actually, I asked the Amplifund tech team, like, is there a limit on how many uploads you can have? And they said it's unlimited. So you can just upload as many letters or as much verbiage in a letter as explains the significance of the relationship.
Perfect. And then can our partners add pictures to their letters of support as well?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. that would be great.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Jocelyn. Okay, Guru Mantra.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
Seth got a question.
Sure.
Yes, I guess again, a little bit of a clarification on eligibility for track one.
Okay.
I was reading that it does not explicitly state that a fiscally sponsored organization is eligible, that it has to actually be the nonprofit. Is that
I'm so glad you asked. Fiscally sponsored orgs are totally eligible. Yes.
okay? So
Yeah.
they will be eligible alongside a nonprofit. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Now, let's say that the fiscal sponsor is the track one applicant, but they could also be fiscally sponsoring other organizations that could apply.
Yeah, a fiscal sponsor is allowed to fiscally sponsor more than one application, more than one applicant. Yeah.
Okay, so they could be the track one applicant. They could issue subawards to fiscally sponsored, of which they fiscally sponsor.
Whoa. I got confused.
A track one is for sponsoring subawards.
Yes.
And a subaward eligibility could include a fiscally sponsored organization.
Oh, you're talking about a sub awardee? Could a sub
Subawardee, yes.
Yeah, a sub awardee could be a fiscally sponsored organization. Sure. Yeah.
And so the fiscal sponsor of track one, or the awardee of track one, who is also serving as fiscal sponsor, may also award to subawardees that are operating under their fiscal sponsorship.
Okay, so the fiscal sponsor is going to be in charge of executing the contract, but the applicant that they are fiscally sponsoring is acting as an independent entity, correct? Like they're not.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so if they apply for a subaward, they would still be eligible because they're fiscally sponsored. And the fact that the track one organization that is managing track one funds is their fiscal sponsor.
Seth, I'm not gonna lie, I am so confused. I feel like I need to write this down on paper with some circles and lines. Is there any chance that we could follow up on this specific question? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a technical gnat, but yeah, I'll follow that up.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Question is, if you have a fiscal sponsor, what are they're able to use the 30% for indirect cost. Is the administration of the grant in terms of reviewing the applications or going out and giving presentations to organizations about applying for subawards within that 5 to 60,000 range? Are those considered indirect cost or direct cost to the grant?
Yeah, so the activities like doing community outreach to advertise the subaward, oh, we have subawards for urban agriculture and please apply to us or whatever. That is all considered a direct cost.
Okay, so then how much direct cost of the grant? So they get 30%, then they may also budget for a direct cost of a certain amount. So it might be, let's say 30% out of 800 is 240,000. Then they have their own project of 60,000. So that's 300 from 800 is 500,000. But within that 500,000 potentially are direct costs that they have to work out. before they have actually dollars for sub awards?
Yeah, I mean, the staff time that it's going to take to do outreach, to review applications, to field questions, all of that is considered a direct cost of the program.
Okay.
If in order to claim 30% indirect, which is allowable, there needs to be a justification. It's not just like, oh yeah, you know, so you'll need to actually justify that in your budget, and it says that in a little note there.
Okay.
Yeah, but does that answer your question?
Yes. Now, one final element around it for a track one that's within their direct cost, they could subcontract those services out to other organizations to perform that direct cost as a contractor.
I think I would need a little bit more specific. So your contractors are absolutely an option. You would need to get 3 bids for that work.
Okay.
In order to hire a contractor for any kind of work and prove like why this can't be done, you know, by.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yes, contractors are allowable.
Okay. Now,
to do direct service.
thank you. Thank you. Now, you just keyed off another question that was in the past chats, and that was whether a contractor that had previously been under contract, do they have to go out for bid again for additional work?
So if the subcontractor that is currently being used by your organization has gone through, like, there, if you're wanting to use them without having to put the work up for bid again, then there's a requirement in the contractor guidelines that asks for you to submit the process that they went through when they originally got accepted to be your contractor. What is the written policy and procedure that your organization uses to hire contractors? You can submit that written policy and procedure, and that would be evidence that you're following your own guidelines.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Rishi.
Yeah, okay, first, just a quick question. Do any of the responses have a character limit?
Only the project goals box in the SWOT analysis. Other than that, there are no character limits.
Okay.
And I think that there's one, like in the summary, it says like a certain amount of character limits. But if it doesn't say anything, it's because there isn't one.
Okay. Okay, and then for the team members, you know, the example says like state the relationship of the team member to the community. So I wanted to know, like, you know, when you're saying state the relationship, like if, you know, if our farm is in one city and that city has the population, you know, one of the populations that we're serving, but we're also like, so our farm is serving both the local population through like our food distribution programs, but we're also serving the county through our training programs. So I guess how is the relationship to the community going to be weighted, I guess, is my question. Like,
oh yeah, so you'll see there are points given, there are additional points given in that question for projects whose program staff or program leadership can actually are a part of the community being served. So yes, there is weight, there is additional points attached to having like the integration of program staff being people from the community. That will give additional points to that question.
Does being part of the community mean that they live in the community, that they
sure
work in the community?
Yeah, I go to my faith-based service here. I played basketball here growing up. Like, what's the relationship to their community? It could be whatever it is.
So, I mean, if I have employees that work on the farm in the community, is that considered a relationship to the community, or is that?
Well, no, because that's only you're just talking about the project. So, you know, outside of the farm, because obviously everybody's going to be a part of it because you're describing your project team. So yeah, it has to be outside of, you know, just commuting to work or whatever is my relationship to the community. That wouldn't necessarily be an example.
Okay. And then in the letters of support, you know, like the letters of support asks like, what's the person who's writing the letter of support, what's their relationship going to be to the project? So does that mean that people who are writing letters of support should be part of the project, and then should they be included on the team?
No, not at all. No. And there's a description of letters of support and who those members could be in the RFA. If you look at the scorecard part of the request for applications, you'll see a description of all that, but it could be a consumer, it could be a volunteer, it could be who you lease your land from, it could be,
Right.
you know, anybody really who is providing a meaningful sort of connection to the work that's being done, who's either benefiting or participating or, being affected by your work.
I was confused because in the letter of support template, it says, this project is important to me, explain your interest, I will be involved in, state your role. So the state your role is just, I'm a customer, or I have been a trainee, or I have been a.
Yeah, just,
Okay.
And you don't have to use the template. The letter of support can be whatever you write.
Right. No, I was just confused by what that was indicating, I guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was just for people who've never even heard of a letter of support, that they would have something to review to help guide them. But aside from that, like, you by no means have to use the template formatting at all.
Can a letter of support come from a team member? Like, let's say if it's the local city official or something?
Oh, if you're part of your team is a city official? Well, that's interesting. It wouldn't necessarily make sense to have a letter of support from someone who's a part of your team because it's almost redundant. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, great. Rebecca?
Okay, I'm back with my budget questions. Okay. So in the project budget for track 2, there's a column that says other funding available to the project. So given that there's no matching funds.
Okay, I'll stop you there just because we're not using that template. The budget is actually built into Amplifund. Right. Yeah, so there's no ask for outside funding in the actual application of the budget.
Okay, so that template doesn't exactly match.
No, it doesn't. It's just giving you the categories that will be in the budget that Amplifund will sort of generate for you. And then you'll just fill in the budget directly in Amplifund. And there's no matching. And there's no, in the actual application, there's no asking about, outside funding. Sorry to cut you off, but I was like, no, there's no point talking about it because that template is not being used.
Okay, so this might relate to then, because it says don't provide individual pricing for individual items within each category. And then—
Are you looking at the template?
That was in instructions, and I can't remember if it was in the, yeah, I think it was the template because there was an example line.
Yeah. So are you asking, so in the budget that you'll actually fill out in Amplifund, there's like a little narrative box and it'll ask you to, so there you'll say how much you want for this category. So supplies, I need $20,000 worth of supplies. And then it will ask you for like a breakdown of what those are in this little budget narrative window. So it's not like a lengthy thing, but it's, there is some itemization that would be helpful to get.
Right. Okay. So, and I assume you want that for different personnel too, right?
Yeah, the personnel, you'll do it by each individual person. Yeah. And you'll see that. I know it's kind of annoying because the thing is that this Amplifund portal, this is the first time CDFA has used it. So we didn't even know what this whole thing would look like when it was built out until after the RFA was published, believe it or not. So yeah, there's a bit of a learning curve there, but the budget in Amplifund, it's built right into the system and it's pretty straightforward to fill out. But please, if you have any more questions about that, let me know.
Great. I'll just go in there, play around with it and email you if I have any follow-up questions.
That works great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Sanzuma.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Lori.
Lori.
Sorry, I can't. Just had Zoom as our organization. Sorry, I can't turn on my video because we keep losing reception, and I don't want to lose reception because people are asking great questions. And okay, we had a question where it says the disadvantaged communities, and we're putting the numbers into these slots, 1 to 3 numbers, the census. Our farm is not in a disadvantaged area, but serves 100% disadvantaged population. So yeah, I wanted to check with you on that.
Yeah, that's fine. So essentially one of the questions, you'll put your project address, which will be the location of your farm. But then one of the questions that's asking for, and I'm not looking at the application right now, but if the program, your project either needs to be led by or serve priority population.
Yeah.
So if
both.
it's serving, then it's fine. Then that will be completely fine.
Okay, because we serve so many, disadvantaged communities in Marin and Sonoma County, but our farm is actually just tiny bit out of the border of. Okay, we were worried if we were going to qualify.
No, that's not a totally unheard of situation. So yes, that's as long as you are really clear about the demographics that you're serving, that works.
Okay, and then I think all our other questions have been answered. So thank you, and I'll just keep listening.
Great, thank you so much,
Thank you
Lori.
so much.
You're welcome. Okay, Ethereal.
Hi, yeah, so I have some questions now about like the awarding process and scoring.
Yeah.
So yeah, where can we learn more about the evaluation process and the scoring
Totally.
for all the
Yeah.
sections? And then
Do you have
also,
an answer?
like, who's going to be awarded? Is it going to be like just top point earners, or is there going to be a like interview section or other like metrics between that? Because I know like with grants, sometimes it can be like clear cut, like just points like 80% and above, or like, oh, we're going to do interview phase, get to know, I want to know if that's what else is going to be in that process.
Yeah. So right now, okay, if you go, I feel like we're going to go over if I take too much time, but if you go into our website, the CDFA Urban Ag page, you're going to see, you can read the request for applications. It says like, read the request for applications. In that document, Ethereal, the last like 20 pages of that are the questions and the scorecard. So you can just take your time and look at the scorecard. The scorecard, it tells you like points will be given for this inclusion in an answer. It's all in the RFA. It's all in the second half of the RFA. So just go ahead, click into that, scroll past all of the bulk text material, and then you'll see this kind of like grid box section that's white and that has columns also like in green. And you'll see it'll say like question, and then how many points are available, and then like what do you get points for in that question, and how many points will you get for including these types of descriptions. So the scorecard is right there. And then with regards to the scoring, there will be a geographic distribution so that it's spread more evenly throughout the state and it doesn't all just go to one region. And then, yes, each application will be reviewed by a team of external evaluators using the scorecard. So.
Perfect, that answers that question. And then, so there's kind of two different answers on how many awards are being given. On like the main page it says half and half, and then on a question and answer it says there's no.
There isn't any. Yeah.
Is it awards of all sizes and to a random number of distribution between like track 1 and track 2?
Yeah, there's no like legislative description on how much needs to go to each track. It's just going to be based on who applies and the merits of each application, and a minimum of 1 community-based organization per region will get a track 1 award. So there's 6 regions.
Right.
Yeah, so there will be a minimum of 1. But yeah, there's no like formal designation of how much is going to track 1 and how much is going to track 2 right now, or at all. There won't be. So.
Okay, I think that's all for me for now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ethereal. Okay, Jocelyn.
Hi, I have a question about resumes. I know that some grants require resumes and I did not see it on this grant. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's no requirement for resume.
Okay, is there a place where we could add them?
If you want to add a resume, would it be attached? You could upload it to, you could probably, I think because the project team section, it's a field narrative. You can kind of, I think that you can upload files into that. I actually need to check. You might be able to like cut and paste the link to the resume language there. That's where I would look. No one's asked that, so I'm not totally sure.
There's not an upload section, it's just a box.
Yeah, the text area in that section, let me see. Yeah, Joss, I will, it would have to be in the project team section, and like Ethereal said, there is no upload button for that section. In short, like resumes are not required in any way. Yeah, so if they can be included somewhere, maybe you could cut and paste the verbiage into the text box for that answer, because there's no character limit for that. So I will leave that up to your discretion, but there might be an opportunity to link something into that narrative box. Yeah, sorry.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jocelyn. Okay, Rishi?
Yeah, just wanted to confirm there's no points awarded for the photo section. Just saying, it seems like we have to.
No, there's no points awarded. If you want to see where the points are awarded in the RFA, you'll see the scorecard, and it tells you how many points are going to each section and which questions.
So, and then looking at the scorecard, you know, it says like 15 points for this, 10 points for that. Is that like up to 15 points or?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've completed, you know, what's described there, then what's, you know, like what it says, like, okay, you'll get 15 points if you have this in this response, then the grader can, or the scorer can give you up to that many points for that response. It's not like
Exactly.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
distributing the grants, you know, if we apply for the maximum amount and other organizations have, there's a lot of organizations with high scores, is that going to determine how many grants get fully funded?
I mean, all CDFA just, you know, says, when I read the language, it just says CDFA reserves the right to not award the full amount to any project. So I don't know how things will roll out, because I don't know who's applying and how much volume we're going to get and how, I don't know. But there is always a possibility that you will not receive the full award that you request in any application.
Okay. So is there, do you feel like the more you apply for, the more?
Oh, no, I mean, if your budget is like, makes sense and it's a justifiably strong project that requires these expenses, you know, there's no points given to not applying for the full amount or anything like that. Yeah.
And if our like I'm applying, you know, I'm planning to apply for the full amount and our project has kind of multiple facets to it that are addressing multiple goals, like is that appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, whatever your scope of work is, there's no reason that you can only have one activity or one goal. Yeah.
Isn't there also a negotiation period where we like finalize our final commitment and budget?
Yeah. This application period is the easy part. The contracts period is when you're going to get into the nitty-gritty with, you're not going to be working with me, you'll be working with grants administration, and they're the ones who have all the legal language. Unfortunately, I have not gone through this process before because this is my first year working for the state. But yes, you are correct, Ethereal, that the contracts and grants agreement part of this period is much more detail oriented than the complexities in this application. Rishi, did I answer the question that you had?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, Guru Mantra?
One more from Seth.
Yeah,
okay.
We've been talking with the UC Cooperative Extension to potentially be a track one. What we've also learned is that the UC system has a overhead requirement of 40%. So under the grant, does CDFA have a separate agreement with UC that would give them, or are they hard set to a 30% limit on indirect costs?
Yeah, everybody is set to a 30% limit for indirect costs. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Was that it? Seth? Okay, great. You're on mute now. Yolanda? And then I think
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
What if I have different blocks? If I have land in different physical locations?
Sure.
Is that okay? And I have it under the umbrella as one farm.
That's absolutely very common. I feel like in urban ag that there are several plots kind of spread out through an area. So yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay,
in the
so what should I put? What should I put as should I pick one and make that the main address, or the business address or whatever, or?
Yeah, so it's gonna ask you for your project address. Actually, I need to look at the application to remember the details.
Yeah.
You'll want to use like your actual mailing address for
Okay,
the application, so that
great.
there's that accountability. But then with regards to your project, I'm sorry, I really would have to go into Amplifund and look at how those boxes are laid out right now.
So do we need to put the actual addresses of all the plots?
I believe that there is enough space for you to add more than one location for your project location. I just need to, okay. Yeah, so the project address is actually a long form narrative box in the intake form. So you can list your addresses if you'd like. Yeah. And then in applicant information, there's a separate section that asks for your project's mailing address and your organizational address. So that's where you would include that information, is in the intake form in the narrative box. You can list your plots.
But it's not required. So I could just put the main project address and just, have 6 or 7 plots that are not addressed, or?
Is there going to be funding going to those separate plots? Yeah, I would include the address of anywhere where you're expecting funds to be distributed.
Okay, and what if there are future sites that you're hoping to get?
Sites that don't exist? I would not include things that don't exist yet.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Sure. Okay, Janine, and then we're running over, folks, just so you know. I mean, I'm here for it, but if you need to go, this will be recorded and posted online as well. So, Janine?
I just had a quick question about the letters of support. So the minimum was 5, and or I thought I saw that for track 2.
The maximum requirement is 5.
Oh, the max requirement. Okay, that answers my question, because I know during that first initial meeting in June, when it was like the community conversation and feedback, that there was talk about like the more letters you have, the more points you'll get.
So for track 1,
confused on that.
Yeah, so for track 2, the ask is 5. For track 1, the ask for full points is 15.
Okay, all right. I think that's where I was confused, is track 1 versus track 2, because we got 5 for track 2. So we're good then.
Yeah, you're solid.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure thing. I'm going to keep going. Yolanda, is that the same hand as before, or is this a new hand up?
It's the same hand. Sorry about that. Let me take it down.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Rishi?
Yeah, so for the letters of support on what's on the points box, the points.
Yeah, the scorecard thingy.
Yeah, it says so maximum points go to it says maximum points are for every member of the team being part of the community, which so that means that even if one person on the team is not part of the community, you would not receive maximum points.
I need to look at if that's what it says, that's what it is. Let me just double check, because I'm not looking at the RFA right now.
Actually have it here.
Okay. So you're in track 1, Rishi, is that where you're at?
Track 2.
Oh, you're in track 2, sorry. Okay. So for track 2, you are looking at question, project title, blah, 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 project team members. Yes, okay. Okay, so you would get 20 points if the applicant clearly describes the project team with different roles for each member, and every member of the team are members of the community being served. Yes, those would be the projects that get the maximum awarded points.
Okay. I guess I might want to have some more clarity about what constitutes a member of the community and what doesn't constitute a member of the community.
Sure, yeah. I mean, a member of a community is like you grew up there, your family is from there, you go see your grandparents, what's your relationship to the community outside of the fact that you're working on this project? I volunteer here. I don't know what people do, but anything that's whatever your involvement is with that community outside of the work that's just doing this project.
Right. Okay, so
Mhm.
just to describe our situation again, we
Mhm.
have, you know, the city that we're in and that we provide certain services to, and
Mhm.
then county that we also provide services to.
Mhm.
For me, that both of those would constitute members of our community. So then the only people who could be non-members of the community would people that live not like outside of the county.
I think that the intention with that question was specifically folks that are receiving services, like that's the community that, let me look at this question real quick. So project, please list the names of each person, blah, okay. Yeah, and their relationship to the community being served. And that in general, when we're talking about community being served, we're talking about those priority populations that are being served.
Okay, so if they're from the priority population,
Mhm.
then okay, so and again in our example,
Mhm.
priority populations in our city, and we also have priority populations in the county. So as long as part of one of those priority populations, they would be considered part of the community.
Yeah, and you can look at, are you using the or did you click on the priority populations map link? So you can kind of like see what all those areas are
Yeah.
designated at in your area. Yeah, so that's the intention of the question, is to really make sure that projects who are, you know, either led by or hiring or whatever, folks that are from the community that they serve would be prioritized.
So if someone is an employee and they don't live in our local city, but they live in another city that has a priority population, should I just say in their relationship to community that they grew up in that other city? Or
As long as it's a city that your organization serves, because the whole thing is what is their relationship to the community being served, essentially. Let me just look at that language again one more time. Be specific about who on the team is also a member of the community being served. So
Right.
that's the
I have
question.
a
Yeah.
question specific to this. Like,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's angled at what's their mailing address, what's their billing address, is it within this boundary? I think it's like, what's their cultural and like connectedness and relevance to the project and how it's going to be executed and why they're important on the project. And if
This is
that matches,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just
Yes.
trying to figure out how to describe that and how it's going to be judged. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Ethereal. That's pretty much, that was the essence behind trying to address the connection between the staff on the project and their relationship to the community being served. So yeah.
One other thought there, you know, the grant also supports elements around workforce development. So even if you have a employer staff member that's from another area that's in a priority population location address, but is working for this project and is making, you know, livable wages as a result, it would seem that, you know, they would also qualify for, you know, a high score as part of the team, because you're improving that area with workforce development of training and job support for this type of project.
I think the thing to focus on is just to be, thank you for that. Yeah, the thing to focus on is really this last part of the question, which is be specific about who on the team is also a member of the community being served. So as long as the relationship between the team member is part of a community that is being served directly by your project, that would be a part of a priority population. That's just the goal, is to bring some value to teams that include community members. Okay, great. I'm going to move on to Judy's question.
Thank you. And so
Sure.
because we haven't beat this horse to death on letters of support, if a county supervisor, if the farm is located in their district and one of their staff members, they're not working on the project, but that community is part of their jurisdiction, does that carry weight like being a member of the community?
The letters of support are really meant to show what relationships are being leveraged that help support your project. So you're not going to get any extra points for having a county supervisor versus a community member. The goal is really to show what relationships are playing a role in the success of your project.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. And I see Yolanda has their hand up.
Yes. So can you describe again the points given for the team, for the project team?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen because this is this seems to be like a hot topic. So let me go ahead. Okay, so this is the RFA. This is the request for applications. You can access this document on our website where it says, read the request for application. Click on that little link and you'll get to this document. When you scroll down, you see this is page 31 of 45, right? And now we're getting into track two scorecard. So I'm going to go to the top of track 2 here. Oh, I skipped it. Okay, that's track 1. Sorry, guys. Okay, let me just keep scoring. All right. So here we go. Track 2. This is the scorecard for track 2. It shows you which sections of the application receive points and which sections there are no points available. So the ones that have points, again, I think you were asking Yolanda about project team. So we'll go to the project team question. So that's the project title question, the organizational address. Here's the project team question. So the project team question, list the names of the people in your project team, their title, a summary of their role and their relationship to the community being served. And then it asks you to be specific about who on the team is also a member of the community being served. And then here you see on the far right-hand column, you see the total points available are 20 points. And then here you see you would get the maximum points of 20 points if the applicant clearly describes project team with different roles for each member and every member of the team are members of the community being served. And then there's like a gradient. The next kind of designation is 15 points for, and so on and so forth. So you can take your time and look at this scorecard.
Yeah. So my question is, what if you're a sole prop?
Oh, well, then you're the project team.
So that means I get the minimum number of points because I don't have a big posse with me.
Not at all. You're the entire team.
Or you could get the maximum because you're the entire team and connect entirely to the.
Exactly.
Okay.
You are the project. There's no requirement for you to have. So you're doing all of the work
right now.
Well, then that's you are your project team. So that is A-okay. Yeah, if you are like project team, I grew up in this community or whatever, my grandma goes to church there, I don't know, whatever the relationship is, that's your story. And that's completely fine. And you would get max points for it's whoever's on your project team.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. I'll stop sharing my screen here. All right, y'all, we're almost 20 minutes over. We're going to be doing this again next week on Thursday the 5th of October. I'll be here at 4 p.m. and we'll be here until 5. And we'll continue to do this October 5th, October 12th, and October 19th. And that'll do it for the office hours. So we've got 3 more of these left. Between there and now, please continue to send your emailed questions in. The answers to the questions that you all so graciously put in the chat, I'm going to cut and paste them into the Q&A document. And I'm going to submit these to both the Grants Administration's office, the ones that I couldn't answer, and also to my meeting with the other program that has done land purchasing. So I will be getting back written answers to those questions. If there's any follow-up, just email me. I see, Ethereal, that you have your hand up, so I'm happy to answer whatever you have on your mind.
Yeah, so I'm on the RFA, but it doesn't, so it says the point evaluation system, but doesn't exactly explain the order of awarding. Is it highest points and as like the budget allows going down the list? And I know you mentioned the regional one, but then beyond that, what's others?
Yeah, so it's going to be, so there's priority for tribal, That's its own bucket. They're scored completely without comparing to any other applications. There's a 10% set aside for tribal applications. Outside of that, it would be a regional distribution for especially, you know, a regional distribution of the regions that we have described in track 1. And then outside of that, it will be, yes, the results of the score.
And the results of the score will also be distributed around the regions, right? So like,
yes, yeah.
There won't be like a cluster in LA or like a cluster in one region.
We won't be giving all of track 2 applicants to one region or anything
Right.
like that. We will try to do we will do a distribution regionally throughout the state. Yeah. And you can look at those regions as a guide of where you can sort
Great,
of
thank you
see
so
that
much.
distribution. Sure. All right, we did it. Sort of. I have some follow-up for sure, so I'm gonna get to work. Yeah.
Thumbs up or
Thanks,
whatever.
Sarah.
Thank
You
you.
show a lot of heart hanging
Awesome.
with us every week.
No
you,
worries.
Sarah.
It's good. I hope it's helpful. So I'll see folks again on
All right.
Thursday if you come back. And yeah, thanks again. Have a
Bye-bye.
good rest of your
Yeah.
day,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.